now we're going to get into the fiscal responsibilities, and these are just some general overviews because the document itself, which I'm going to be providing for y'all, I mean, it's expansive. It's 20 pages, but we'll briefly go over the fiscal responsibilities, the main things you should know when you're purchasing. So the first one is ensure that all financial transactions have proper authorization. So that's simple. Make sure you have approval to go out and buy those pens and paper from Staples. Ensure that all fiscal transactions are recorded in the university's finance system in a timely manner. We actually have 30-day cutoffs each month that if you make a transaction within that time period, you have 30 days to document that in an expense report, attach your receipts, give the business purpose, why did you have to buy these, and attach all that stuff and submit it, and it goes to your approval. As you can see back here, it would go fiscal staff, it would go to a fiscal manager. If you're a fiscal manager that purchased, it would go to a fiscal principal, and you get the point. It goes on and up. Maintaining documentation in accordance with university policy, records retention. Before we had our new expense system, the records retention rule used to be 3 years plus the current. Now that we have our new expense system, once you upload those transactions, your receipt images, your business purposes, you put all that information within the expense system. Once it's approved, we don't require you to keep paper copies. The digital copy is now the record, the official university record, and you can shred that, throw it away. Though I will say a lot of departments, as I mentioned earlier, can be more restrictive. They do require their employees to keep paper copies. Next one is providing accurate representations and source documentation. We require receipts for any transaction over $25. So it needs to show, we usually require itemized receipts that show what was paid for, the vendor, and that it was paid by some method. And so that would fall under that accurate representation of source documentation. Now these last two are very important. Challenging any transaction that does not appear to be an appropriate expenditure of university funds. So as we go back to those fiscal code of ethics and responsibilities, it's your duty to say, hey, I don't think these are proper transactions, and to be able to report that to the appropriate people, us being one of them, the consultants, finance and procurement consultants. And that's why you cannot, if we go back here, if I'm a fiscal staff in this area here, I can't approve reports for my boss who may be a fiscal manager, because we feel that that kind of makes a conflict of interest, because I might be afraid to question my boss's purchases. So that's why we have the hierarchy. They got to go up. You can't approve your supervisors' expense reports, reimbursement reports, just because you may not feel comfortable challenging the transactions. And then so the last one kind of goes in with that, not approving your own transactions and not approving any transaction for your supervisor. In our marketplace system, we have a 3-way matching system, which means that if I submit a request to purchase pens and paper from Staples and I don't use my card, say I go through our marketplace system, I cannot approve my own report. I would have to have someone who's designated an approver within our department say, these are good to go, the transaction will go through. And as I mentioned earlier, you can't approve transactions for your supervisor because it just doesn't make any sense. So now is the fun part, the test of propriety. People usually like these the most. These evaluate whether or not an expenditure is an appropriate use of university funds. And one thing, all these questions need to be answered yes to be considered passing the test of propriety. And so I usually like to refer to these as a stop and go. If you even say no once, you got to stop, turn around, do not pass go, do not collect $200. So the first one is this transaction for official university business. So that's simple. If I wanted my dress shirts dry cleaned for work, I couldn't use that because that would not be official university business. The second is is it in the best interest of the university? That means if, what's a good example? Take for example, we have janitorial services, and so they come in and clean each night. You can even request that they clean a little bit more, maybe they dust a little bit better. Now, is it in the best interest of the university if I wanted to go out and hire a private cleaning service that charged double what the janitor's office would to do additional cleaning? It depends, and you'll find out there's a lot of gray area in some of these, in which where we come in and we help interpret. But I would say probably no. So you would stop right there, because we have services on campus available for that. It's probably not wise to waste university money going to do that. Is this transaction the most effective way to accomplish official university business? I mean, yeah, if I want to go on a business trip and I want to stay at a 5-star hotel in New York, it's probably not the most effective way. It's not the most cost efficient, which we do require. And so that's probably a bad example of what not to do. And speaking of that, we won't cover it in this presentation, but one of the most common questions we get is, can I fly first class? As we go through these, you can probably think that one of these will be answered no. So, no, you cannot fly first class. Is this transaction in compliance with applicable policies, laws, regulations, and rules? And if more specifically, if you have a grant or subcontract with the government, there may be donor restrictions that say, no, you cannot purchase meals for prospective employees with my money. We do have donor restrictions that do prohibit that. One major donor restriction, and it's the most common, sensitive, the one question that gets us most ready to just dig through the rules and regulations is alcohol. And alcohol can only be purchased with what we call a Fund 34. And Fund 34 are donor funds. So, I gave $1 million to the university. We ask, whenever they do that, on all the paperwork they fill out, we ask them if they allow alcohol purchases with their money. And we call that a gift attribute 2, and it has to be yes. So, if you're going to purchase alcohol, it has to be a Fund 34 or a donor fund, and they have to explicitly say that you can't purchase alcohol with that. And the next one is, within the available resources of the responsibility unit, taking into consideration all outstanding commitments and encumbrances. Encumbrances are things that you have booked on your budget through that fiscal year. So an example of encumbrance would be salaries, fiscal salaries. So my salary, Katie's salary, are encumbrances on their department's budget. And so this question is asking, do we have the funds available? Yes or no, it's simple. Is it directly beneficial to the responsibility unit where it is being charged? That just basically says I don't want to use our speed type fund to purchase something for the math department because that has no way to do with my responsibility unit here. Is it reasonable? And this one I actually noted on there because it goes into a little bit. Reasonable. So what does it mean by reasonable? It means that the quantity and quality of goods or services being purchased is sufficient to meet the university's identified need without exceeding it. And so you don't want to, you want to make sure that this need is actually for the department, you actually need it for the university business. And the last one, is it in compliance with university conflict of interest provisions? As we mentioned earlier, does it meet the conflict of interest test? Can't purchase for my brother-in-law. Is it conflicting if I'm purchasing something that I know? If I'm doing a side job, I can't give myself, a government contract with the university. Kind of common sense things. That covers the. And one thing, but further, consider the following, and these are the two questions we ask a lot when people call us asking questions. Would a university outsider, so would your daughter's teacher, your dentist, your barber, the person checking you out at the grocery store, will they consider this expenditure or this expense, financial transaction, to be a reasonable and necessary expense of public funds? We are a public university, so we're always very mindful of how we look to the newspapers, to the student organizations, stuff like that. Second, we'll consider, would you want others, such as newspapers, radio, television, or other media outlets, knowing and reporting about what you have decided? So would you want them to know that you purchased that? You personally, as I mentioned, university cards are in employees' names. So would you be okay with your name being on the 6 o'clock news regarding the purchase? And then the last, I just kind of want to cover sensitive expenses. These are certain expenses are deemed sensitive due to the nature of the transaction and how they might look to someone not working at the university, kind of as we mentioned before on the test of propriety. In addition to meeting all tests of propriety, sensitive transactions must comply with additional conditions outlined in the sensitive expenses procedural statement. I have it linked here. You will get a copy of that. But I just wanted to kind of go over certain sensitive expenses that we get a lot. We'll do this quickly. The first one is alcoholic beverages. That gets asked a lot, as I mentioned. Automobile-related expenses. Can I pay for gas here in a private vehicle, commercial vehicle? One that's almost as more common than alcohol is, can I buy break room supplies to put in our employee break room? You'd be surprised that the answer is no. Anything that's deemed a consumable, napkins, paper plates, cannot be purchased with university funds. Most departments collect the fund. And then the last one thing I want to go over with sensitive expenses, there's tons of them. Flowers, fruit baskets, and greeting cards. That's another common one. Can I buy a gift basket for Katie because she's sick in the hospital? Yes, you can. Can you buy it to wish her a happy birthday? No, you cannot. And if you want to get an exception to that, you have to go all the way back to the hierarchy and find out you have to find out an appropriate officer to approve that. And then just to review, these two websites that are included in your packets are just full of resources. I even myself reference these on a daily basis. It's our Procurement Service Center procedures page, and then our Controller Policies and Procedures page that list all of these documents we refer to and many, many more. Once you start getting into more training and things like that, you're going to find out that we have policies and procedures for everything. And then just my contact information for you to have. As I said, my name is Adam Rodriguez. I'm a finance and procurement consultant. I can be reached at finprohelp, F-I-N-P-R-O help, at cu.edu. At this number below, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Though I do sometimes answer my emails on the weekends, so if you're working late, you have a question, we may get to it. And so I just want to thank you again for coming. If you have any questions, I'll be available for after the presentation. And as this is just your introductory course. As you get into more further of your job training, you're going to dig deeper into our university policies. So thank you for coming.